The night bled shadows over the city, and the rain didn't fall. It attacked, slashing through the air like broken glass. I stood on the edge of the graveyard, my coat heavy with water, my breath fogging in the cold. The wind howled through the trees, carrying whispers that didn't belong to the living. Somewhere out there, a bell rang once, then silence. That was when I saw it, a fresh mound of dirt, the ground uneven, as if someone had been digging in a hurry. My boots sank into the mud as I approached, each step swallowed by the storm. The faint yellow glow of my lantern flickered and sputtered, fighting the wind, and in that trembling light I saw the coffin. Its lid was half buried, splintered open. Someone had been here, recently. I crouched, brushing away wet soil, and that's when I heard it. A soft, rhythmic ticking from within. Faint but unmistakable. Tick, tick, tick. Like a heartbeat that refused to die. My pulse quickened. I pressed my ear closer. The sound grew faster, like panic trapped inside wood. Then it stopped. All at once. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was alive, heavy, crawling under my skin. Something moved behind me. Slow, deliberate steps, crunching on gravel. I didn't turn. My hand went instinctively to the revolver beneath my coat, but I didn't draw it. Instead, I said quietly, "You're late." The voice that answered came from the darkness, calm, almost amused. "You shouldn't have come alone." Before I could reply, something cold touched the back of my neck. Metal. A weapon. The rain roared louder, drowning out everything but my heartbeat. "He told me you'd find it tonight," the stranger whispered. The lantern went out. In an instant, the world vanished, only darkness, wind, and the faint smell of earth and smoke. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen, until a flash of lightning split the sky. The grave was empty. The coffin, open. The ticking gone. But there was something else now, something carved into the lid. The words looked freshly cut, deep and uneven. Time owes its debt. I ran my fingers over the letters. The grooves were still warm, as if carved moments ago, and yet the wood beneath felt old, decayed, like it had been waiting years to speak. My breath caught. Then I saw it, a flicker of light on the hill beyond the cemetery. A house. Its windows burned with a faint golden glow. The same house that had burned down 7 years ago. I'd seen its ruins myself, covered in ash and silence. But now it stood whole again, tall and waiting. Thunder rolled across the valley as I stepped closer, every instinct screaming to stop. Through one of the glowing windows, a silhouette appeared, motionless, human, watching me. My stomach turned cold. The figure didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. The wind carried something faint toward me, a whisper, a laugh, maybe a memory. My mind fought to make sense of it, but something deeper told me not to. My hand slipped into my coat pocket, and that's when I felt it. A hard, cold shape. I pulled it out slowly. A pocket watch, covered in mud and scratches, the same words engraved on its back, "Time owes its debt." I didn't remember picking it up. I didn't remember ever owning one. But as the ticking began again, steady and alive in my palm, I realized something that froze the breath in my chest. The watch wasn't counting time forward. It was counting it back. It started 3 days before the grave, on a grey morning that smelled of old rain and cheap coffee. The city was still half asleep, hiding its secrets behind fog and silence. I unlocked the door to my office, a small, forgotten corner above a pawn shop on Westbridge Street. The sign on the glass said Private Investigations, but it might as well have said No Hope Today. Inside, everything was exactly as I left it. Papers stacked on the desk, ashtray full, typewriter dead silent. The ceiling fan turned lazily, pushing around the stale air of old smoke and lost dreams. I lit a cigarette, sat behind the desk, and tried to remember when I last had a client worth remembering. The rain outside was steady, tapping against the window like a heartbeat. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps, hesitant, almost apologetic. The kind of knock that carries a story behind it. I opened the door, and there she was. A woman in her 30s, tall, wrapped in a grey coat soaked through from a storm. Her eyes were tired but sharp, scanning every shadow in the room before meeting mine. "Mr. Hale?" she asked, voice trembling just enough to make me curious. I nodded and stepped aside. She entered slowly, as if the ground might betray her. I offered her a seat. She didn't take it at first, just stood there, clutching a small leather bag, water dripping from her sleeves onto the floor. "I wasn't sure you'd be here," she said. "Not many are, this early." "I keep strange hours," I replied. "What can I do for you?" She finally sat down, crossing her hands tightly. For a moment she said nothing, just stared at the rain crawling down the window, gathering her courage. Then she reached into her bag and placed an old black and white photograph on my desk. It showed a man standing in front of a large country house. The photo was faded, but I could see enough. The man's stiff posture, his uneasy smile, the kind of eyes that never trusted the camera. "That's my brother," she said quietly. "His name was Thomas Langley. He's missing." "How long?" I asked. 2 weeks. Maybe more. The police searched the property. They said he must have run off. Debts, stress, something like that. But they're wrong. He wouldn't leave. Not him. I leaned back, watching her. She wasn't lying, or at least she believed every word she said. "Tell me about the house," I said. She hesitated. "It's old. Been in our family for generations. My brother inherited it after our parents passed. He used to write to me from there, letters about strange noises at night, clocks stopping at midnight, and shadows moving through empty rooms. I thought he was just lonely, until the letters stopped coming." Her voice faltered, and I noticed her hands were shaking. "When did you last hear from him?" 3 weeks ago. He said he found something buried in the garden. A small chest. He never told me what was inside." I studied the photograph again. The house loomed behind her brother like a ghost, its windows dark and empty. "And you think whatever he found has something to do with his disappearance?" She nodded. "I don't just think so. I know it." Then she reached into her bag again and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. She unfolded it slowly and placed it in front of me. A pocket watch, old and cracked, the glass spidered with scratches. "This came to my door 2 days ago. No name. No note. Just this." I picked it up. It was cold, heavier than it should have been. The hands were frozen at 12. On the back, engraved in faded letters, were the words, "Time owes its debt." My pulse quickened, though I didn't know why. The metal seemed to hum faintly, as if remembering something it shouldn't. "You're sure it was your brother's?" "Yes. He wore it every day." I slipped the watch into an envelope, sealing it like evidence. "I'll take the case," I said finally, "but I'll need to see the house." For a moment, she looked almost relieved. "It's about an hour north of here. I can drive you tomorrow morning." I nodded. "Be here at 9. She stood, but before leaving, she looked back at me, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Hale," she said softly, "if you find anything at all, promise you'll tell me." "That's the job," I said. She gave a small nod and disappeared into the rain. When the door closed, the office felt colder, emptier. I poured a drink and stared at the photograph. The man's eyes seemed different now, darker, more alive. Maybe it was just the light, or maybe the room was playing tricks on me. I told myself it didn't matter. A missing person, an old house, a frightened sister, it all sounded simple enough. But deep down, I knew better. Cases that start with silence always end with something loud. That night, I couldn't sleep. The rain wouldn't stop, and every creak in the building felt like footsteps. Around midnight, I heard a faint ticking from my desk drawer. I opened it slowly, half expecting to find that same watch waiting inside. But there was nothing, just papers and a pack of cigarettes. I told myself it was my imagination. It had to be. Still, I sat there for hours, listening to the dark, until the first light of morning crept across the window. Somewhere in the distance, a clock struck 12. And for a second, I could have sworn everything stopped. The next morning came too soon. The rain had stopped, but the sky still carried the color of smoke. Miss Langley arrived right on time, driving a dark car that looked older than both of us. She didn't speak much on the way north, and I didn't press her. The road wound through hills and thick woods, the kind that swallow sound. As we drove, the city vanished behind us, replaced by silence. After an hour, the house appeared through the mist like something half-remembered from a dream. It stood at the top of a rise, tall and tired, its windows blank, its gates hanging crooked. The kind of place that makes you feel watched before you even step inside. We parked in front of it. The iron gate creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing far too long. The air felt wrong, heavy, still, as if even the wind refused to stay. Inside, the hall smelled of dust and time. Portraits lined the walls, all of them with eyes that followed you no matter where you stood. He used to say the clock stopped here every night at midnight, Miss Langley whispered. I glanced around. She wasn't exaggerating. There were clocks everywhere, on the walls, on tables, on shelves. Some grand, some small, all silent. I picked one up. Its hands pointed to 12. When did they stop? I asked. The night he disappeared. She led me through the rooms, her steps cautious. The house was a museum of secrets, drawers half open, notes scattered, furniture covered in sheets. In the study, I found a journal on the desk, its pages damp with age. The handwriting was jagged, frantic. He's watching, one line read. The sound comes from below. Another said, I think time is folding. I frowned and kept reading until one phrase made my stomach tighten. Time owes its debt. The same words. I showed her the page. She paled. He wrote that 2 days before he vanished. I looked at the floorboards. There were scratches, circular patterns as if something heavy had been dragged across them. A rug covered most of it. I pulled it aside and found a trapdoor. Did you know about this? I asked. She shook her head. I lifted the handle. The hinges groaned, revealing stairs that disappeared into blackness. The air that rose from below was cold and wet, like a breath from the grave. I drew my flashlight and went first. The steps led down into a narrow cellar lined with stone. Dust hung thick, and somewhere in the dark I heard it again, the faint ticking. Slow, steady, patient. It grew louder as I moved forward. My light caught something ahead, a small wooden chest, half buried in dirt. I crouched and brushed it clean. Same carving on the lid. Time owes its debt. Miss Langley gasped behind me. That's what he found. I opened it carefully. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, was another pocket watch, identical to the first. But this one was still ticking. The sound filled the room, sharp and unnatural. I turned it over. The back was engraved, not with words, but with a date. The day her brother disappeared. Suddenly, the ticking stopped. I looked up. The flashlight flickered. For a brief moment, I saw someone standing in the corner of the cellar. A man, pale, motionless. Then the light steadied, and he was gone. Miss Langley saw it too. Thomas, she whispered. I didn't answer. The air felt charged, like before lightning strikes. We climbed back up, and when we reached the hall, every clock in the house began ticking at once. The sound was deafening. Then, just as suddenly, they all stopped. I turned to her. When did you say the police searched this place? The day after he vanished, she said. They found nothing. I walked to the study again. The journal lay open on the desk, though I was sure I had closed it. The last line had changed. New ink, fresh. It read, he found me. I stepped back, my pulse pounding. We are leaving, I said. But when we reached the front door, it wouldn't open. The locks turned, but the wood wouldn't move, as if the house itself refused to let us go. Miss Langley started to panic. I tried the windows, same result. That's when I heard it again, faint but clear, coming from upstairs. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. We followed the sound to the landing, the floor creaking beneath us. The footsteps led us to a door at the end of the corridor. I pushed it open. Inside was a small bedroom, untouched by time. Dust floated in the light like ash. On the bed sat a third pocket watch, ticking louder than the rest. The walls were covered in old photographs, portraits of the same man over and over, but each one older, more hollow, until the last was nothing but a blur. Miss Langley's voice broke the silence. "That's him," she said. "That's my brother." The watch ticked faster. I reached for it, and as soon as my fingers touched the metal, I felt a sharp jolt, like a memory forced into my skull. A vision, flashes of digging, lightning, a man screaming as the earth swallowed him whole. Then darkness. I staggered back, gasping. The room was spinning, and every clock in the house began ticking again, faster and faster until it sounded like 1,000 hearts beating in unison. Then silence. Only the watch in my hand remained alive. The hands had moved. It was now 1 minute past 12. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew one thing for certain. Whatever Thomas Langley found, it wasn't meant to be found. And whatever it was, it had started again. By the time we escaped the house, dawn had broken, though the sky looked wrong, pale and bruised, as if morning itself had forgotten how to rise. The air outside was cold and still, yet the sound of ticking followed us all the way to the car. Miss Langley sat in the passenger seat, her face white as marble, the pocket watch clutched tightly in her hands. I started the engine, and we drove without a word, the road cutting through fog that seemed alive. For a long while, there was nothing but silence and that faint, steady pulse of time that didn't belong to either of us. When the city finally appeared on the horizon, it looked smaller, like a painting that had lost its color. I pulled over by the river, killed the engine, and let the quiet settle between us. The water was calm, but every ripple looked deliberate, like it was breathing. "What did we see in there?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to say it was just fear, shadows, tricks of the mind, but deep down, I knew better. I took the first watch from my coat pocket. It was ticking again, soft but alive. The second one in her hand ticked in perfect sync. The two of them together sounded like a heartbeat, steady, human, impossible. "Your brother found something that wasn't meant to be touched," I said. "And I think whatever he woke up, didn't go back to sleep." Her eyes filled with tears. "You think he's still alive?" "Not like we understand it," I said. "Maybe not alive, maybe not gone. Just caught somewhere between." She turned the watch over and stared at the engraving. "Time owes its debt." "It always does," I murmured. The wind picked up, cold and sharp. I opened the second watch. Inside was no clockwork, no gears, just a hollow space filled with black dust and a folded piece of paper. My pulse spiked. I unfolded it carefully. One word. My name. Haile. The ink was fresh. I felt the world tilt for a second, my breath catching in my throat. Miss Langley saw it too. "What does it mean?" she asked. I shook my head. "I don't know." But that wasn't true. I knew exactly what it meant. The handwriting was mine. My hands began to tremble. I threw the watch into the river. It sank without a splash, but the ticking didn't stop. It echoed in the air, faint but endless. Miss Langley gasped, pointing across the water. "Someone's there." I turned and saw him, a man standing on the opposite bank, still as stone, the fog curling around his legs. For a moment, I thought it was Thomas Langley. But when the light shifted, I saw the truth. The man was me. Older. Tired. Watching. I blinked, and he was gone. She screamed, but her voice sounded distant, fading into the mist. I drove her back in silence. She didn't look at me, didn't speak again. When I dropped her off at her hotel, she thanked me in a voice that wasn't hers. The next morning, the papers reported a fire. The Langley house had burned to the ground. No survivors. No remains. No trace of Evelyn Langley. The official story called it an accident. I didn't argue. I never went back there. Weeks passed. The city moved on. But the ticking never left me. I heard it in my office, in my sleep, beneath the noise of traffic and the rain against the glass. Sometimes it came from nowhere at all. Sometimes it came from inside my own chest. One night, I woke to find the pocket watch lying on my desk again, dry and gleaming, as if it had never touched the river. Its hands were moving backward, slow and deliberate. I watched it until it stopped, 12 sharp. Midnight. Since then, the clocks in my office haven't worked. Every one of them stuck at the same hour. And every time I close my eyes, I see that house on the hill, whole again, waiting in the dark. Its windows glow like eyes, and from somewhere deep inside, I can hear him, me, whispering the same words over and over. Time owes its debt. And this time, I think it's almost paid in full.